Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Nathan Garland.
And I'm Daryl Flanagan, and we are the group known as Revelation.
And so today we got asked the question of, and let me pull up the specific question because it is a pretty deep question that we all need to come to the reality of, and we need to know. And it is, how do we let God have control of our lives and not us take control of it? And that was a really hard question when we got that. Like, we probably got that question about roughly a week ago. And so, we spent a week trying to figure this out. And that is just,
it's just a really good question.
Yeah, it's hard. But, all of it comes down to trusting God. That's step one, is, you have to trust Him. Daryl, what do you think? As far as
you just can't take it into your own hands. Whenever a problem happens, we tend to like to act from our emotion and act in the moment. But I feel like if we truly want to let God take control, that, whenever these bad things happen, the first thing we do is just go to the Lord, go to Him in prayer, be like, I don't know what you're doing right now, but if it's your will, it's what I'm supposed to be right now. So
right. And so like you said, I think a lot of it, and the reason that people start to take control into their own hands, is that there's a problem that happens, and then they like to think that they can do it themselves.
Yeah, they think it's easier for them to try to go at it full head on in the moment, instead of just stepping back and letting God take control.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with arrogance. We all get cocky and arrogant, which that. I think that's why a lot of people start to lose their faith, is because of how arrogant we get over something. And me personally, I sometimes struggle with that, is arrogance. But the best advice on how I would handle, letting God take control over you, is number one, figure out what that problem is that's caused you to get in that mindset. Then talk to God and get out of that mindset, and then really just kind of let God happen. Daryl, what do you think?
I'd have to agree with you. First, you have to get out of that mindset that you can do it by yourself. I've, from personal experience, I've been in a lot of situations where I just went on, by myself and not even, stepping back. And, they were, it wasn't even, a big situation or something small, but we tend to just act from what we're feeling, instead of actually letting everything just go as God's planned and letting Him take over.
Yeah, I think you're right about letting God, because that is hard. A lot of us struggle with letting God happen, and it sounds easy.
Yeah,
but it's just 4 words.
I was just thinking, I just said how it's easier just to try to do it by yourself, and I have had those challenges in my life, where I thought I had to fix it right now, and just been in those moments where I felt I had to go at it by myself, because I felt God wasn't doing anything. But then, whenever I got to a point in that problem, I just realized, I can't do this by myself. And that's whenever I just decided to step back, and I just spent time with God and let Him do it.
I think those are the biggest times that God works the best, is when we finally break down and we hit the point of realizing we can't do it on our own, and we have to let Him. And I think if you really do want something to happen, you have to get to that point of realization, I can't do it anymore. Because with that, you can't get something done without God. Nothing works. You can't do that on your own. Even if you start to think that you did that, I hate to say it, but you're wrong. It's really God that's doing it. That's just providing you the tools or whatever in order to do that. Daryl, what do you think as far? It's kind of the breaking down, and that's when He works the best.
Yeah, whenever He puts us in these difficult times, it's more of strengthening our character and who we are as a Christian more than anything. Whenever He sends these challenges our way, and whenever we give it to God, I feel that's more as a sign of being I don't know, I wouldn't say more Christian, but just trusting Him more, and having more faith in Him,
right?
Instead of whenever these challenges are being thrown at you, they're to make you stronger. But sometimes it's just easier to just let them take over and just beat you down.
Yeah, and whenever you start talking about trials and stuff, that brought me to like the book of James in chapter 1. And like one of the very first verses is like, in this world, like you're going to have troubles and trials, but you need to take joy in it. And, like number one, like that's just weird. Like you're just like, how do I take joy in like something bad? But then he kind of goes on to say, the reason that I'm doing this is to help strengthen your faith. And so that's why we all go through these hard times, is in order to get closer to him.
And for me personally, whenever I'm going through like a difficult situation in my life, I find it more helpful whenever I'm praying, not just to pray what bad is happening, but I also give thanks to God for all the blessings He's been giving me.
Yeah, and I think that's something that could help you too, is like instead of focusing on the bad, take a change and look at the good. Like really start to pray and like thank God more for all the good that's happening versus all the bad. Like this week, like I kind of hit this point of like, like I started convincing myself I've had like these bad things happening, and I started outweighing that than the good. But in all reality, like I went back and looked on it, the good outweighs the bad. You just have to choose to look at it that way. It all comes down to a choice.
Yeah, it comes down to your choice and your mindset, whether you let it take over or you let God take over.
Sally, I think a lot of people let this stuff take over them. I think like a lot of people like get away from like God and stuff is because they start to overthink, and that's what Satan likes to do, is to get us to overthink things. We're turning things into what it's really not.
Yeah, like what Satan likes to do is that little problem that could have just easily been dealt with, just like stepping back instead of like rushing it, whenever you took charge by yourself, and like, it just probably kept at it, making it worse and worse. And then like the devil, he will get inside of your head and just like tell you like it's all your fault, there's no way out of this. But that's like what you were talking about, like him just taking over.
And like whenever like Satan really starts to like dive in at you, that's when God is really trying to work with you, and Satan is aware of that. Like I think Satan messes with the ones that he's the most afraid of, because he knows what's going to happen. And something that I do really encourage you to do, and we've said it a lot, is like really like a part of trusting God is to get into the Word in order to learn how to do it. But we're going to tell you, like, Satan knows the Bible better than anybody. But along with him knowing it, he knows how to justify it and make it sound right and like how it is. So that's why you have to really be careful and on guard with what you hear, especially in a lot of churches today, because like I hate saying it, but churches today are starting to compromise with the world and start to just go with what they want. And that's how Satan works. He likes to compromise with the wrong and make it sound like it's okay. And so like I really encourage you all to really get into the Word and kind of guard your heart like that.
Yeah, I really couldn't have said what you just said any better. Mainly just you have to let God take control, and you have to stick to His Word. And like we both said, change it up for a difference. Whenever you're praying, just don't pray about that bad thing. Thank God for all the blessings that you do have.
Yeah.
Because you may not realize it whenever you're like in like that mood, or like you're just focusing on that one bad thing. But we're mainly blessed. We will have these like challenging times, but if you just look at all the good things, it'll certainly overweigh it.
Yeah, and something that I like to think about, and I think some people are going to disagree with on this, like with me on this, and this is where we want you all to get interactive with this. Is I'm going to talk about something, and I want you all to tell me what you think, because I've told people this, and they've kind of been like, I agree, I disagree. So something that I really think is, a lot of people say, once something's happened, you need to forget about it and just move on, right? And, we hear, like, Jesus has come, the old is gone, the new has come. I really think that in order to get your relationship with Christ to get better, you have to sometimes look back at where God put you and where He got you out of. And see, if you don't look back on that stuff, arrogance is sure to follow you and make you sound like, oh, you're perfectly fine, you're doing everything great. And then you start to work yourself up, and the next thing you know, you're starting to think you're better than God. But in all reality, when you look back on the things that He's brought you out of, you really are like, oh my gosh, like this is what God did. Now I can't wait to see what He's going to do next. because like that all strengthens you.
Yeah, looking back at that challenging time in your life, after a point of time, you know, you can look back on it and then you can see like what you did learn whenever God put you there. And like like I've done it like myself looking back, you know, I'm like thought like why would God even do that? But then looking back, I realized, you know, it was to shape me for a challenge that I would be faced with in the future.
Yeah. It feels like one thing is set up for another. Like I really, really believe that's how this works.
Every challenging time is worth like it's shape us and to prepare us for
yeah.
something.
Daryl, before we close out, like what did you think about the whole looking back? Like, do you think it is okay to look back, or do you think you need to completely forget it and move on?
I would agree with you. I do think it is best if you look back, not just to see like how God had like where you started off, like what God sent your way, what you like what you like grew from that, like how you grew as a Christian, like what He taught you, and then like you know if it's been like a long time, then you could see like think even closer to time thinking. So whenever God used that, how did He use me in the future? You know.
Yeah, and I think you have to be really careful when you look, because like when I say look back, I don't mean like look back, think all through that, dwell on it. Like that's not what I think. I mean like, you know, you get faced with a situation, you're like, well, this happened, God brought me out of it, now let's go back and face this. Like it's a very fast thing. And you know, we'll make another video more explaining that, what we think, but you know, that's kind of where we want to get your all's opinion. What do you think on that? And Daryl, do you have anything else?
No, I don't.
All right, guys. Thank you all for watching.
See ya.